Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Political Power Ranker. Chris Berg. I'm the director of politics for all the Nexstar affiliates across the country. And joining me, as always, are my buddy, my best friend in Boston, Spencer Kimball, the Emerson College polling director. Spencer, great to see you. Another week into the new year, and you, my friend, have a big new poll that you're about to release. Tell us about it.
Well, Chris, always good to see you. Last week we were in Illinois. We went south this week down to Texas. And in the great state of Texas, we got a chance to study both the general election and these primaries that are coming up in just a couple of months. So if we take a look at our sample here in Texas, we have overall about 1,165 registered voters. But within this set of voters, we have about 550 likely Republican primary voters and 400 very likely Democratic primary voters. So we'll get a chance to be able to break down those primaries with those likely voters today.
Texas is coming into the spotlight right now with the Republican Senate race, the consternation of what's going to happen in 26 with all of these races, and can the Republicans keep the House? And some are saying they may even be able to, the Democrats may even be able to flip the Senate. So that's where this Republican race for Senate is very, very important to the Republican side in Washington, D.C. So tell us what your numbers show for the Republican Senate race in Texas.
Well, this is a Republican-held seat. We got an incumbent, John Cornyn, running for re-election, and what we see is a very competitive race with Ken Paxton. What we had back in August when we did this poll, we had Cornyn up by maybe a point, 30 to 29, and now we have Paxton up by a point. Now in Texas, you need to get a 50% threshold to win, otherwise there's a runoff. And in this poll, we have Wesley Hunt, who has now entered the race. And what's interesting that I found in this number is he didn't really create a big dramatic shift for either one of the candidates. There's a drop in undecided voters, but both of the candidates lost a couple of points. Cornyn lost a few more points, but it'll be interesting to see how Hunt in the race, what votes he gets, but then if he doesn't make it to the runoff, where those votes are going to end up going.
Exactly. And we're going to be joined now by a person who is probably, well, I know, is the best political reporter in the state of Texas. And his name is Gromer Jeffers. Gromer's been with the Dallas Morning News for going on 20 plus years. Have you hit the 30-year mark yet, Gromer?
No, not quite yet,
But close.
Yeah.
He knows where all the bodies are buried because he helped bury some in Texas in the world of politics. Gromer, you saw that top line there of the Republican Senate race. John Cornyn has spent a lot of money since last summer trying to get it even. And so he's basically right there, margin of error. Wesley Hunt's in the race. What are you thinking when you see these numbers today?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Cornyn has spent, as you mentioned, a lot of money over the summer, really hammering at Ken Paxton. And then of course Hunt entered the race and he had to uh, turn some of the fire on Hunt as well. It will be interesting to see what happens when Paxton gets fully engaged, starts spending some of his campaign resources. Will that move the numbers one way or the other? But you got to figure Cornyn has done, at least to this point, what he intended to do over the summer and in the fall, which is make it a race that was more competitive than we thought, at least when it first started, when Paxton first entered the race. So it's that right now. It's kind of an even race.
And yeah, he was down by some accounts, double digits early last summer in some of the polling, and
Right.
he evened it up at this juncture. Spencer had a question about Wesley Hunt. What were you thinking there, Spence?
Well, when the idea was that Hunt was going to hurt Cornyn more, and it would help the Republican
Ken Paxton.
Paxton in the race. But when I look at the numbers, he pulls a little bit from Paxton, a little bit, but it's not this huge shift. Is Hunt really a game changer, or is he just there right now, kind of holding up some of the vote, and they're going to kind of split that vote afterwards, or do you see it going to one of the two candidates?
Well, the with Hunt, he can play depending on how strong he is, and he still has room to grow. But his role would be pushing it into a runoff. So, because if he pushes the race into a runoff, you mentioned 50 to 50% threshold. If no candidate gets over 50%, it's a runoff. And presuming that Paxton and Cornyn are in a runoff, that gives either candidate more time to build organization. And keep in mind, if there is a runoff, it is hard to get voters back a second time. Who comes back to the polls the second time? Your most enthusiastic voters. And in the Republican primary, it's the most conservative voters. So that could favor Paxton. And so if this race goes into a runoff, it could hurt Cornyn. I think Cornyn would have rather won it outright if he did win it. And that's what the Hunt candidacy does. It could buy more time for Paxton if Hunt doesn't get to where he needs to be.
And we saw that way back in 2012 with the Ted
Right.
Cruz, David
And
Dewhurst
David
race,
Dewhurst. Yeah, remember
where,
Chris, the first round,
yeah,
Dewhurst got in the mid to high 40s, I believe,
right.
46, 47%, went to a runoff. And I remember Cruz saying, Cruz told me, if this gets into the runoff, I will win and I will win decisively. Remember that was an August runoff, I think
Yep,
August 31st, and then Cruz won going away.
yep. He did, and he's been there ever since. Prophetic words. The one other thing before we go to the next slide, this is really a question starting with Spencer and then Gromer. 29% undecided. That seems high. Any thoughts there, Spence, for starters, on why we know these candidates. Why is it so high?
Well, it has dropped from the 37% back in August, so it's going down. But I think without a Trump endorsement in this race, voters have to make up their own minds, and they're going to have to take a little more time to look at these candidates. But as you said, they kind of know, at least the top candidates. I think Paxton and Cornyn. Maybe Hunt's got some name recognition and that's where I think Romer's talking. He's got some room to grow if he's able to raise his recognition across the state. He's got a short period of time to do that. Early voting starts pretty soon, but that's what's up in the air.
And it's a March 3rd primary. Gromer, what are your thoughts on that undecided number?
Yeah, I agree. And that's what a candidate like Hunt is looking at, saying if I can get a bunch of that undecided, if those undecided people are torn between Paxton and Cornyn and looking for another alternative, then maybe I can make it into the runoff. And certainly that's his goal. Three-person races are always interesting. Cornyn is pretty much a known quantity, and so is Paxton in Texas. And so I think that means that people are taking a second look. Will that help Hunt? We'll see. Running in Texas is tough. Running statewide is costly, and it's a short time for him to do it.
It's a huge state, bunch of media markets, very costly in Texas. And Texas, California, and New York, those are um, difficult states for anyone just trying to get name recognition in a big statewide race. But let's go now. Let's shift gears and go to the Dems, because this is for Senate. This got really interesting very quickly over the holidays with Jasmine Crockett joining the race against State Senator James Tellerico. We thought, Colin Allred was going to be there, and he shifted gears and is now running for Congress, House seat. Spence, tell us a little about these numbers and what you're seeing, because it's kind of a surprise to some of us.
Yeah, it was a surprise because we haven't had a chance to look at this race. As you mentioned, back in August, we were thinking Colin Allred was running, but now what we see is James Tellerico with a 9-point lead over Jasmine Crockett, a competitive race here. But what we do see are some big demographic differences. But one other number on this screen to look at is that 15%. That's half of where the Republicans are. They're at 29% undecided. So the Democrats, they've got a little bit more focus, the voters do, on who they're going to vote for, and it's going to be an exciting race between these two.
Gromer, first reaction to those numbers?
Yeah, it's it's kind of surprising. You didn't know what to expect because the newness, the freshness of this race. We thought that Allred would be in it. It would be interesting to see where the support is coming from each candidate. We know that Jasmine Crockett is strong with black voters, uh, and is sort of pretty much liked uh, uh, in with Democratic voters because of her popularity, her image as a fighter. But there is that electability issue that's out there as well. Uh, so I think that this is fluid. We probably see this thing change as we get closer to the election.
And let's go to those demographic breakdowns because those are very interesting. Spence, walk us through this slide.
Well, this is what's so important. The Hispanic and white vote are breaking for Tellerico almost by the same numbers, almost 2-1. And the black vote, as Gromer said, is heavy for Crockett, 80-8. So you can see there's a racial divide happening within the state, and then there's a gender divide. The male vote is breaking for Tellerico by about 20 points, and the female vote is split. So Crockett needs to make more inroads, obviously, with the male voter or extend her base of support with female voters, but the black vote won't be enough to put her over the finish line like it did Joe Biden back in 2020 because it's only a two-horse race. So if there were more candidates in the field, she does have that strong base of support, but she's going to have to grow that a little bit more, I think, to be able to get to 50% and win this match.
Gromer, do you think these demographics are baked into this race at this point? I mean, people know who they're going to vote for, or are they swayed? Because 15% is not a big undecided number.
No, it's not, but I think there's room for each candidate to, for instance, nine out of 10 black voters for Crockett. Tallarico probably believes he can take that down just a little bit. I mean, that's going to be tough. And I know Crockett probably will tell you that she will hold her own with Hispanic voters and especially with white women voters as well. And that's probably her goal. Not if it is 2-1, if you believe that it is 2-1 with the Hispanic vote and white vote for Tallarico, Crockett probably feels like that she can bring those numbers more to her favor.
Mm-hmm. Um, in reference to uh,
And Chris,
the
let me just
largest,
say
yeah,
before, I'm sorry about that. This is really important. Organization, voter turnout, and getting the machines cranked up because each candidate will have to be able to exploit those advantages. So if Tallarico does have advantages there, he has to make sure that his voter turnout operation turns them out. He's been in the race much longer. The challenge for Crockett is to really get out there. She announced December 8th. Not a lot of time. She has to get her machine cranking and get that voter turnout organization in gear. Sorry.
does she have the money to do it and the staff?
We'll see. I mean, we'll see. Right now, I think she has to be able to get there because she just started. Uh, we'll see about the money. The reports are due January 15th. We'll see how much money she has. She had 4.5 or 4.6 million in the bank from her federal congressional account. That's a good starting point. But yeah, Chris, it's going to be about having the money and resources and team available to get those voters from the couch into the polls.
And one last question on this. Is Tellerico in their camp, are they happy Allred shifted to the House side, and happy that Jasmine Crockett replaced him, or would they rather have gone against Colin Allred?
They were preparing to run against Allred. Uh, they felt the contrast there was easier to make because Allred ran in 2024. There were still some people disappointed about that result against Ted Cruz. And remember, he ran on bipartisanship and sort of being able to reach across the aisle. Had some Republicans like Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney endorsing him. In this moment, though, a lot of Democrats want a fighter, somebody that's really going to take it to Republicans. And Tallarico was confident that he could make that contrast and convince voters that he was that fighter. With Crockett in the race, though, that changes the dynamic because she is just as much, or if not more, of a fighter, a GOP killer, if a GOP fighter, if that makes any sense. So he has to shift, retrofit his campaign now to go against Crockett, and I think the issue now will be who is best to take that fight to Republicans in November, the electability issue.
Very interesting stuff. One last slide to get to before we got to take a quick break. Spence, let's look at the governor's race here real quickly. What do we see here?
Governor Abbott holding a 8-point lead against his Democratic opponent. He wins the race, remember, a couple years ago by about 11 points. So this is in the ballpark. He's got a 47-47 approval, disapproval in the state. So there's definitely some room for the Democrats to grow in here. Difficult to knock out the incumbent governor, so he's got a slight edge, but a competitive race.
And he's at 50%, so that's always something you want to look at, right? You get to 50%, you know you're
Look, there's
doing
only
okay.
8% undecided here. So remember, in
Yeah.
the Republican primary, it's at 30. In the Dem, it's at 15. In the general election, voters kind of know where they're going to go, and that's going to be a challenge for the Democrats, whoever gets that nomination.
And Gina Hinojosa from the Houston area, her name recognition is not huge statewide. And Gromer, that number 50-42 just feels like a normal Republican Democratic voter breakdown in the state of Texas. Republicans will win by 8 pretty much no matter what. It's like indicting a ham sandwich kind of deal.
Yeah, it seems like you're right, just a routine kind of ho-hum number. And it makes you wonder how many people are really engaged in the race. There's sort of a foregone conclusion with a lot of people that Abbott will win. So because those numbers, you would think if he had it really cranking right, that maybe he would have a bigger lead. But I think there's an assumption that the race is over. So the challenge for Hinojosa and the Democrats is to get people paying attention to the race to feel like it is competitive.
Yep. All right. Hey, we've gone through about 15, 18 minutes of the show already. Time flies. We got to take a quick 1-minute break, and we'll be right back with more Political Power Ranker and more spots and dots from Mr. Spencer Kimball up at Emerson College Polling. Welcome back to the final segment of Political Power Ranker. Spencer Kimball, Emerson College Polling, with us with his numbers. Gromer Jeffers, political reporter from the Dallas Morning News, helping us with some analysis. And of course, myself, political director for Nexstar Media Group's stations. Spencer, we've been talking a lot about the head-to-head races in the Texas poll and the Senate race, and we did governor. But let's look at the matchups. You've got some interesting information there.
Well, this is what both parties are trying to, pivot for. The Democrats would like to see Paxton get the nomination because you can see that their two candidates run even with Paxton. And the Republicans would like to see Crockett get the nomination because Cornyn runs better against Crockett. And so that's where the parties are. But the primaries will determine which candidates come out from there. But you can see the Republicans feel a little stronger, or they look a little stronger with Cornyn, and the Democrats look a little stronger if they're going against Paxton.
Romer, anything there surprise you?
No, I mean, the theory of the Democrats winning their first statewide race in 32 years is Paxton as the Senate nominee. If this was a clear ride for Cornyn, if it was clear Cornyn would be the Senate nominee, I don't think you would have a lot of Democrats in the race, right? Uh, so they have been hoping for Paxton to emerge as the nominee to be able to take advantage of that. So that doesn't surprise me. It'll be interesting on the Democratic side, uh, the Crockett-Tallarico matchup, because there are differences in how those two Democrats feel like they can win in Texas. Crockett is big on expanding the electorate, bringing more Democrats into the process, uh, where you can sort of offset that structural advantage that Republicans have in general elections. Well, Tallarico said that that's not really possible to win just by doing that. You have to go after soft Republicans, even Trump voters. You have to bring some Republicans into the process, get them to vote for you. And so that's kind of interesting as well, because one of them will be the nominee and have to implement that particular strategy.
Well, she brings to the table a magnetic personality. You know, some people don't like her at all, and there are other people who just love the way she handles herself and takes the fight to Republicans. And that's got to worry Tellerico a little bit in that sense that she may be able to do what she says she's going to do and get more people excited and come out and vote.
And who gets people excited? The people with the magnetic personalities, the controversial people. Donald
Right.
Trump, right? I mean, it doesn't. You, it's not always when you have these huge vote getters like Barack Obama in 2008 had a generally positive image across the board, right? People felt good going to the rallies. There weren't, you didn't see stories about how hated he was on the other side, things like that. But, look at Donald Trump in 2016. There were people who just didn't like him. People don't like him today, but love him or hate him. He brings eyeballs to the process. He invokes passion, and that drives people to the polls on
Right,
both
exactly.
sides.
Yeah, absolutely, for good or for ill. Spence, one thought on you from you on that the personality differences between the two Dem candidates and what you think that may do to polling and what you're seeing.
Well, we've been talking about this race for 8, 9 months, and we talked about Crockett early on, and we had some Republicans that were kind of, excited that she would run. And I was thinking, well, this is where the energy is in the party. You better be careful of who you pick because, to Gromer's point on Trump, the Democrats back in 16 thought, oh, Trump would be the easy one to knock off without the
Right.
experience. You better be careful of what you choose because that energy is something that sometimes we don't capture in the polling. And we see it in election day, and that's where these candidates can, surprise us.
That's absolutely right about not capturing it in the polling. Because remember in 2016, you just didn't. I mean, thought Hillary Clinton would win because of the polling, right? But you didn't know, like, you know, how many people that you didn't contact, you hadn't talked to or reflected in those polls would actually get out and participate in the process.
Yep.
Well, yeah, those different types of candidates bring out different types of
Yeah.
voters. And that's
Yep.
something, remember, only, 60% of people are going to go out and vote. And in midterms, it's going to be even lower. So they've got to have a reason to get out there, and she could be that reason.
This is going to be fun. That's all I got to say. We're going to have fun, Gromer, covering all these races in Texas this year. One last slide before we need to move on to who's up and who's down. We're talking issues in Texas. And Spence, what do you have?
Well, we've got the economy. That's your issue. You see threats to democracy. That's the issue for older voters. So depending on who you're connecting with, in immigration looks to have ticked down a little bit since August. But the economy is still up there as a top issue for voters and a big concern, along with affordable housing in there.
What's very interesting is that the immigration number just dropping, and that's a positive for Republicans. I mean, with border crossings, at all-time lows, Gromer, that's got to be something that Cornyn can build on since he's, seeking Trump's, you know, accolades. He's not going to get an endorsement probably because he doesn't want to endorse in the Republican primary, but that's got to help him a little bit.
Yeah, it does. It does. Um, because he wants to convey him, he wants to portray himself as a partner of the president. And but you mentioned endorsement. It's probably disappointing to him that he didn't get it. That really would have put him in a good position.
We could do a chapter and verse on a Trump endorsement in the Senate race and why or not it's not going to happen probably in the primary. But we have to move on because we've got a final segment, and that's Spencer sharing with us who's up and who's down, who's up, who's down this poll in Texas. Spence, who's up?
Well, as I take a look at these numbers on the Democratic side, James Tellerico is up. leading that primary at this stage and having that base of support with the Hispanic and white vote. We'll see if he can hold on to the Hispanic vote, particularly younger Hispanic voters, but right now we have him up.
And then who's down?
On the Republican side, we have two candidates down. We have Ken Paxton. He's still hovering in the high 20s, and along with him is Wesley Hunt. Both of these candidates, Paxton's running poorly in the general election compared to Cornyn, and Hunt is struggling to become the alternative in that primary, stuck in third place. So we'll see if he can move the needle. Otherwise, he's down this week.
Gromer, your thoughts as you wrap up, as we wrap up the show and the up and down part?
Yeah, again, I don't know if the numbers on the Democratic side of the poll reflects where the race really is, but I do think that the demographic sort of allocation is on target, with Crockett strong with black voters, and then Tallarico with Hispanic and white voters. But I think there is an opportunity for Crockett to show that she's stronger in a couple of those demographics. Same with Tallarico. And on the Republican side, we just have to see Paxton campaign. And we just haven't really seen him do much in terms of an air war or anything except for little fights in social media. So it will be interesting to see what happens when he really starts aggressively campaigning.
That will make it interesting, and it may not be until after the primary when there's an actual runoff if he's up against Cornyn
Yeah,
in
the
that runoff.
danger though, Chris, is you with the undecideds and Hunt, you don't want a situation where Hunt can surpass you and make it in there.
Yep, gets ahead of you. And then
Yeah.
Katie barred the door. Who knows what's happening next?
Yeah.
All right, we got to go. Spencer, great seeing you. Gromer, pleasure as always. Thank you for joining us on Political Power Ranker. Hopefully you can come back again when we talk Texas. Everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll have a new poll next week. We're going national next week, so it'll be interesting. And you can follow us on all our social media channels when you have a moment to see what the latest news is on polling. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week.